Hello, I'm against Lisa Griffith again, and now we're going to shade this study that we just did in contour. This is the two round objects on a patterned ground. We're going to start with, I think we'll just start with the black form first, which is the cup, and then move to the white form, and then at some point we'll throw the ground in. And we'll do what we did last time. We'll do the overall thing in really fast shading, and then we'll move back for detail. Okay. So let's start here with our ellipse. Let's check our ellipse and make sure that we have the shape we want, because we can change it at this point if it needs help. But I think it's okay. The only thing we have to do now is I have a very dark contour line. At some point now I have to figure out the thickness of the actual cup itself, the actual thickness of the cup, and how do we make that appear so we get darker on the inside and lighter on the outside. So let's put that back the way I had it, and let's go in and start there. I'm just gonna do a fast overall shadow, putting in my darkest darks and my grays and leaving my brightest whites. The given of the paper is the light of the paper, and I'm just going to leave that alone. Excuse me, and try to leave that so I can go back and negotiate at the end any little bits of lights and darks. So this is pretty good right now. I am good to go in with my eraser. I need a pointy eraser at this point and start to indicate that is good there. I like that. I'm going to give myself just a subtle dark edge here. This is a new eraser. I'm not sure I like it. I found it at the art supply store, and I'll have to play with it some more. But right now it's smudging my charcoal, not really cleaning it up. So I want an eraser that I know will clean it up. This is my white Mars eraser, or white plastic eraser. People are called different names by different companies, and I know that will clean up. There you go. That cleans up my charcoal mess pretty nicely and doesn't leave much dirt behind like an art gum eraser does. Alright, so I want to clean that back up again, and I'll go back with it later and do more work on that and make sure I've got it just the way I want. Now I've got to shade this. Remember, in our contour drawing we have this really beautiful white. It's a reflection of this bowl, so we're going to make sure that stays there because we like that. It's not as white as the white of the paper, but we'll negotiate that later when we have dirty hands. So we're going to just go in. This is the darkest here. And then we have kind of a lighter tone. Right here was a lighter tone. It wasn't really white, but it was lighter. And it's the reflection of the paper I glued onto my books to make a nice simple background. Control your space at all times. When I learned to draw, I drew in the basement of my mother's house, and I called it my dungeon because it was dark down there, and it was just me and a bunch of pin lights and the cats. And I could control my light source, and that really helped in drawing one, and drawing two is having control of my light. I didn't know it until later on when I was trying to draw in an apartment building in Chicago, and I had huge windows in this small one room I had, and I just had the hardest time trying to control light. I finally found large sheets of paper and glued them in front of them and taped them in front of the window to control how much light was coming in. The shades were too expensive. I was a student. I didn't have any money. So if you can control your light source, you're more than halfway through your problems. Okay, so this is not as dark as that, and most of it does have some dark elements down here, but we're just applying the charcoal like a fast, loose painting almost, so that we can come back and shade in. I'm saving those bright whites that I suggested were there. This was very dark, so let's get in here, and this is that half circle that's the underneath that disappears right there. This was my very bright white that I like, the bright bounced light. We're not going to shade that at all. We're going to leave it alone. This is the break in the handle. We're going to show that off because it's kind of cool. This all of a sudden looks like somebody took a bite out of it, but it just broke. And then down here we have that bright white again. We're going to leave that. We're going to come along here. There's an interesting thing going on where you have a very dark half circle and it's lighter right there. So we're going to try to shade that. Now how does that look? That's not bad. Okay? We're going to just very, very lightly, if we can do it without too much trouble, just push that down a little bit so it's not so white, a little darker here. And I think if you squint, overall, that's pretty good. That's what's happening with the lights and the darks on this, except that there is more dark right here and right here because our light source is coming from here. Okay? Well, actually, the light source is more from here. All right, now in this bowl, the front of the bowl is very dark, beautiful dark, very even too, which is unusual in a drawing. You don't often on objects get such a nice, beautiful, smooth light source on a full surface. So use that to your advantage. Just one beautiful, even almost dark. It's a little darker underneath, just like with the egg. If you remember the egg just 2 weeks ago, you had tended to get a little darker underneath where it meets the plane, the ground plane. Okay. Now inside here, we have a lot of various lights and darks happening. I threw my stuff in my pocket so that I could use it easy. We're actually just going to use this. We're going to pull it off like we were doing onto here, and we're going to go into this because this is so light compared to the rest of it. I'm going to see if I can make myself a spot. There we go. Where I'm actually pulling charcoal off the surface. With you, it would be a piece of paper on the table. You can buy actual packages of just bottled charcoal. I find that to be almost silly. But there are artists who like them and use them. I'll just do this. Okay. So again, you're going to just indicate what you see as the bottom, and this is my bottom. And I've got a lot of lights and darks going on this beautiful egg, this beautiful bowl. And I'm going to clean that up right there. And go back and say, that's good. Now that's good for a fast, quick charcoal. Now what I have to do is now figure out my gray ground with my white lines. Remember, we do have that pattern we have to draw. So what I'm going to do is indicate where the lines are. I'm going to gently start to bring in my charcoal and leave the white of my form alone. And try to do that. And then get in there. And this is where a smooth piece of charcoal that's been kind of softened and rounded by the other times we used it comes in handy, because you'll get surface applied, but you won't get such sharp lines. And we're going to go in and just shade this now. We're going to bring it down. We're trying to create a gray, which we kind of did. Okay. And now we're going to make sure our pattern is the white of the paper. Alright. So let's just keep doing that for a while. We're going to stop. We're going to stop at the shadow right now, because when we hit the shadow, we're going to get a little darker. So I think I'm going to try just to do this gray tone. as quickly as I can. So I'm not wasting too much of your time, but I want you to see how it's done. All right. Okay. I'm using right now I'm using a Kleenex to do some nice scrubbing in. And I'll just scrub right into the drawing because I'd rather have the pattern or the surface look like it's going into or right behind instead of stopping. I don't want to stop because if I stop I'll have a white halo around the form and you don't want that. You want the object to feel like it appear that it's on the surface you've just created. Okay, so let's go in here. Now we're interlocking with the cast shadow just to get the gray tone, and I'm going to go back and add the gray shadow, the darker tone of the pattern for the shadow. It's going to get a little messy, but you'll see. It's not too bad. Alright, now my cast shadow, and now this is where it's okay to just go over the white pattern because no longer is the white as white as it is back here in the cast shadow. We can quickly go back and outline and fix that I just merged into the background because I needed to make sure the pattern goes right up to the object and disappears under the object. And then we can cast the whole shadow. It was darker under here. It was a little dark. It was that weird little shape. I think it's something to do with that handle right there coming off. Okay? And then go back in. Just give it part of that background space again. And if you need to, and you don't want your lines to be completely gone from your shadow, because you could say, well, I can still see those lines. You can always go in and just bring them back a little bit. In that cast shadow, just a little bit. Okay. That's pretty good. Let's quickly get this side done. I've done so much here, I don't really know what's my line. I think that was my line. So I'll work on the outside of it. Now my cast shadow, remember, was right here. It was quite beautiful. It was darker under here. It had a nice softness right here that went right off the whole paper. I lost my charcoal. I gotta make this darker, I'm losing it. So get back into that. Okay. And try shading that up. Now the shadows are softer and less defined. The objects are always a little sharper and more defined. Unless you, for some reason, sometimes you have just a beautiful, sharp shadow and you want it, put it in. Whatever makes sense at the time that you're drawing, do it. How's that? That's pretty good. We have, so far, we have ground and we have cast shadow. Now what we need to do is go in and shade. My timekeeper, how much time do I have?
13 minutes.
Okay, let's go, keep going then. Let's go in and let's go back to the black one, and let's see if we can now, we're manipulating this shadow, see if we can merge this thing into a rounded cup. So let's work on that. What I'll do first is, I don't like this edge, I want to fix it. So I'm going to actually make my cup a little bit wider, right there. I'm going to actually shade it more. I'm going to get in there with just the dirt on my fingers, and the dirt and the charcoal that's been built up. And I'm going to start to smooth it out and shape it. It's a little darker on here, this side, this interesting cast shadow, it's actually a bounced light. And I need to sharpen up this bottom because it got a little messy with our background. So let's go in there. Some light source is happening right here. You can always shape your kneaded eraser and start to pull it back. Once you've made it too dark, you're like, oh, I can pull that back. And that's what the kneaded eraser is really good for. And don't worry, you'll know when the kneaded eraser is too dirty. Just keep kneading it. I hold it in my hand because the warmer it gets, the better off you are with it. It works better when it gets a little sticky from the heat of your hand. And when it falls apart and will no longer knead, but become little black bits on your table, then you need a new one. Otherwise, keep going with it. If you move them around, don't store them with your charcoal because they continue to pick up charcoal. You always want to put them in a baggie by themselves, on the charcoal by itself, because it will bleed onto everything you own. Okay, so we want to get this nice dark here that I have. This is still the darkest element, and it comes around, but there's this beautiful kind of playing of bounced light and reflections that I want to try to get as quickly as I can. This has got to get darker now because it seems like it's too dark. Our original line is in there bothering us. I may not get it completely out because my lines have to be pretty dark, but I did a pretty good job there.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. So then let's shade this up. Get in there with my hands. This is not going to have every bit of detail I want on it because I just don't have the time. I only have half an hour for each video. The camera that I own doesn't really like to go past that time. Start having trouble and issue, and it just cuts off at some point. So you should take more time to get yours done as best you can. I just want to give you a suggestion on how to do it so that I'm not leaving you to just figure it out on your own on this digital class. And you can go in and really work it. And you can always send me images at any point during your drawing process. Send me both. Send me both the image and the still life, so I see what you're looking at. That will help me get you the best help I can. I can look at the light source and see what's happening. So send me the best image of both that you can. Alright, so we just want to catch that. There's some lights and darks going on. Let me quickly shade this up. This is the golden bottom of this thing. It's got like a coppery bottom. So, and it's dark, not as dark as the black body of it. And I want to get in there and shade it just a little bit. And then if I have time, I will jump to the bowl. If I don't have time, like I did with the boxes, I will finish up the drawing and submit a image below the video, a still of the finished drawing. And I'll write any comments that I think is important for you to know. If I did something really different or changed anything, I'll add my comments. Okay. So that's pretty good. I could do way more work on that base, but I'm going to say that's good. If I have time, I'm going to shade a little bit in here. And again, this is exactly the same. We're going to shade this up. And once we have the feel of it. The difference in the white one, in this white, is very much like doing this inside of this bowl is going to be very much like shading our egg, except wanting it to go round, we want it to go concave. So we want to push where the base is, which is right here. This is the base of our bowl, and you can indicate that. And then you want to make sure that you have a nice line or an edge here that is your bowl. And that would be where you would come back with your eraser and indicate that shape right there. Okay, that helps. Right. So for now, again, this is another fast study. They should take a lot longer than 30 minutes. Normally, if I were drawing this, I'd take 3 hours. Or even longer. I'd come back and just play with it. A lot of times I'll put a drawing away because I don't stop playing with it. So, again, good fast studies. Get it to this point. If you have trouble, you can always send me images and I can give you my input. And again, during the help sessions, bring the drawings and images of the still life, and I will help you finish anything that you're afraid is not done yet, but you don't know where to go. All right? So thank you, and I hope this helps.